we'll get there eventually again. I think it's just going to take much longer than anyone is probably feels like or is comfortable with. But I'd rather take a little bit longer and sort of do it safely than go back into another shutdown, another lockdown, which another one, I don't know. I don't know how many people can sort of face that.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. With the evolution of our culinary landscape came the advent of venues that blurred the lines between wine bar and restaurant. These venues epitomised the new wave of hospitality down under, a casual wine bar swagger, comfortable, at times rowdy atmosphere, but where quality food and wine helped grease the wheels of social discourse. What will happen to this beautiful evolution of our industry? Almay Jordaan is the chef and co-owner of Melbourne's Old Palm Liquor and Neighbourhood Wine. Almay, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's good to catch up. How are things at the moment in Melbourne? You're heading towards the possible opening up of society again, if all things go to plan. How are you feeling? Good.
I think everyone's starting to try and feel that light at the end of the tunnel now. Everyone's well and truly over it. Just trying to reach that last bit of positivity to kind of keep us going for another 2 weeks. I think today, tomorrow. Yeah, it's about 2 weeks now, I think.
What's this period of time been like? You've got 2 venues in Melbourne and you've had to manage both of those through this tough time. Has the experience been different for the different venues?
Yes and no. I mean, I guess we try to approach them with the same manner of thinking, but I guess we really wanted to differentiate them as online brands because we kind of needed to keep both going as separate entities. We never really considered sort of working from one kitchen or any of those sorts of things, which has taken a lot of creativity and a lot of thinking on our feet and a lot of input from the staff at both venues, because ultimately we relied on these teams to kind of help us churn out the takeaway and the sort of takeaway booze offering. So yeah, they're doing pretty different things. Neighbourhood Wine sort of in the first lockdown they were kind of doing more of the roast meat thing that Neighbourhood is known for, and it was a mammoth effort. And then we decided to, in the second lockdown, turn it into more of a pasta-driven kind of offering. And the chefs that work there have worked in some pretty good places, pasta-driven places, and already had the knowledge. So we just sort of chipped out, got a pasta machine, and started doing a few dishes, and it's worked pretty well for us. And I think we were actually probably going to integrate something of that into our offering from there on. I mean, we'll never be a pasta restaurant because we're not really that Italian, so to speak. But I think we found something else to add to the repertoire at that restaurant, which has been a good thing. And at Old Palm, I'm still doing some things off the grill, although I've learned some hard lessons about how much grill work you can do to order in a takeaway format. So it's some really bad lessons, and ultimately realized why people don't do that as a takeaway offering. It's very expensive and it's very slow. So there've been some really hard lessons, but I think we found our groove and we're just kind of sticking to it now until we can get back to some sort of whatever the normality will be after this. Yeah.
Neighbourhood Wine was a place that you had already, and Old Palm Liquor is a relatively new venue. What was it like, sort of given that it is a fairly new venue, having to deal with this pandemic and keep it alive, as so many restaurants find the first couple of years quite difficult to turn a profit?
Yeah, rough, I'd say. Neighborhood was good because we had so many super loyal customers, and we've got a lot of love from them. But Old Palm, yeah, super new restaurant. We were lucky that it actually got a fair bit of attention when it opened. So we just needed to kind of work with that momentum and really knuckle down and try and sell things. We're very lucky with Old Palm that it has street frontage, which is the advantage that Neighbourhood Wine never had. And yeah, there are people, because everyone's locked down and they're out for an hour or whatever every day, so everyone goes for their walks or their exercise, whatever they're allowed to do. We actually got found by a whole lot more people who live here and never actually paid attention to what was in the streets around them because they go to the city all the time or they go elsewhere. So we actually, it's helped us in some way. From a street frontage point of view, that was a big plus. And then we delved pretty hard into online sales, and that's kind of buoyed us quite a bit as well, which has helped.
Your venues are part of this amazing new wave of blurring the lines between wine bar and restaurants. But what sort of challenges did you have in translating that into this sort of at-home takeaway model?
Um, I think less translation and more something totally different. I mean, a wine bar is all about loads of people together, drinking and having a good time and lots of noise. And all of a sudden, all of that's gone, and you can't really recall that memory, or you can't really translate the feeling that you have in a wine bar or in a noisy space like our spaces are into any kind of offering that you're going to send home. So we basically just looked at, for us, it was more like, how can we sell what we already have, with the resources we already have in the restaurants at a proper price point that's going to work during lockdown. And sort of there was a lot of weeks of trying to figure out what are people looking for right now, what are they missing, what is already out there. I mean, the nasty thing about this is every restaurant is just trying as hard as they can to sell stuff out there. So we're all in competition, obviously, and everyone's trying to put something out there that'll sort of apply to some niche in the market. And yep, we're just part of another restaurant trying to do that and doing our best to still kind of resonate with people who liked what our brand kind of meant to them, I suppose.
Being venues that veer towards being wine bars as much as restaurants, you would have had a lot of wine stock on premise, as well as I know that you have a lot of keg wine as well. Was there some initiatives that you did during the lockdown to move some of that stock?
Yeah, so we had just gotten a massive amount of keg wine, thousands and thousands of liters, before the first lockdown, and then we got closed down, and we were like, we need a, like everywhere else, you're like, we're sitting on these open kegs, and we're also sitting on thousands of liters of wine right next door. We need to sell this stuff. So we came up with a sort of $20 natties liter wine kind of idea, and we just got pallets and pallets of liter bottles, and literally just wrote what the wine was on the bottle and started selling it, and it did really well. It did really well on Instagram. Some things did really well that we never even planned. Like, people just sort of really went for it, and in the end, we actually had to scramble to find more wine from guys out in the Yarra Valley, and just whoever was around us. And in the end, we ended up buying. We had to buy a van. Like, I think it was an ex-ambulance so that we could fit the pallets of bottles and keg wines in, because it did so well. We just ended up we bought another few thousand liters of wine, and we've actually moved an incredible amount of natural wine, which is good, and that's kind of really kept us going. Like that's it's been the saving grace, and it's been an interesting thing to see how something like that has worked. It's we're selling our entire wine list, but that's sort of been the major driver. I'd say.
What was the impact on staff? I know that you employ many international staff, and you've had quite a different team in both kitchens. Was the impact quite brutal during this time on all of your staff and the sort of hours available for ones that you could hold on to?
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know who it was not brutal for, honestly. More of it was just the mental impact of what the hell do we do, that that kind of hit everyone, and how quickly you had to think about trying to do something about it. We have about 50 people that we employ across both restaurants. And in the first week of the first lockdown, we had to stand down all of the part-time employees, which was about half of that. So we paid out all their leave and everything we had owing them to make, so that they had some money available to them straight away. But it was a shitty time, and it was so uncertain, and it was really weird for everyone. Luckily, we could keep all our full-time staff on, which was sort of the other half of the teams, and we sort of built a new business in both places with them. And then by this end of the second week, we got the part-timers back, and sort of the end of the month, everyone was working again, which is good. So we got loads. We really didn't lose that many people at all, like a handful in the end. They've been really good at adapting to what we threw at them. It was a super, super hectic month that no one wants again. And I think what we ended up doing, everyone's job changed. No one is doing what they want to. And some people decided that, you know what, this isn't for me. I don't want to be part of this. And they've sort of left. But all in all, we've kept most of our staff. We didn't actually lose that many people at all. So we're super lucky in that regards.
I understand you weren't always going to be a chef, that you wanted to be a botanist originally.
Yes, I still do. I just don't know where I'm going to find the time, to be quite honest. It's a lifelong dream. I reckon I'll get it right at some stage. It's my plants are my main passion, apart from food. But yeah, that's for now. I'm interested in how I can, cook with them and sort of grow some strange things in my backyard. I'm interested in particular varietals outside of cooking, so that's my sort of little side hobby.
How did you get involved in the career of chefing? And I understand your first day was one of the most embarrassing of your life.
Yes. I think I've tried to erase that from my memory every now and then.
Sorry.
It comes back to haunt me. Yes, I think I didn't eat or something. I think I've blocked out bits of it, honestly. But yeah, I was super excited, and they were still super long days that everyone was working. Like, you rocked up, super early in the morning, and you just worked until the work was done, which was, the end of the night. And I didn't eat, and I was overwhelmed, and it was a weird, the kitchen was noisy, and the chefs were bloody scary, and the guy on the grill was terrifying, and I was just like, wow, what have I gotten myself into? And I was kind of hiding in the larder. I think it was on the larder section, obviously, I suppose. And I fainted. Oh, I knew I was going to faint, so I tried to get away and, I don't know, somewhere get out of the kitchen, but I didn't get very far, and I fainted into the head chef's arms, which is up there with one of the most embarrassing things you can do, I suppose. And then I didn't wake up. I woke up. They took me to a restaurant table, and I woke up, and it was like the head chef and the sous chef staring at me like super worried, and I was like, oh my soul, this is the worst. I can't come back to work. This is the worst thing ever. But they laughed it off, and they were very good chefs. They were very nice, and they were like, it's fine. This happens a lot. It doesn't happen a lot, I know. Now. And yeah, just had to work through it. I think they gave me like a Coca-Cola or something, and I carried on. But I won't ever let myself live it down, to be quite honest.
Well, that experience didn't prevent you from building an amazing career in the industry. What's been some of the real highlights for you?
I think the fact that I've been able to cook in a lot of different places, and a lot of different cities. I think I've been really lucky doing chef school in South Africa, in Stellenbosch. A lot of the times your prospects are sort of just South Africa, and whilst I super loved that, and the intention was always going back to South Africa and cooking there. I had the opportunity when sort of South Africans could still get working holiday visas in the UK to go and work in London. And I just got in the gap. Like, I don't think it's really possible anymore for South Africans to do that. And work in the UK. And the chef I had worked for before in South Africa, he was working with the South African, with the government and sort of all the embassies around the world. And even while I was in London, he would sort of give me a call and go, hey, I've got this gig in Moscow, because the the embassy wants to show the local, I guess a Russian delegation. They want to show them how to cook with ostrich.
Wow.
I think ostrich was our main thing that he cooked with, and I would fly from London, and he would fly from South Africa, and we had this really weird week in Moscow cooking ostrich, and that's a whole different story. But cooking in Russia is pretty weird, because there is no English or there wasn't then, on the ingredients. So just trying to shop for the ingredients or talk to the chefs in the kitchens, who at that point had never seen a girl in a kitchen. It was a very weird experience. And Moscow itself is a trip. And then we did the same thing in Budapest, the same thing in Madrid and Lisbon, and trying to do this quite an interesting concept of I guess diplomats sort of having these do's that they do, and we being the cooks, you get to see a very different side of things that you're not often exposed to just as a restaurant cook in London. And I was kind of happy in London, the idea was to go back to South Africa, and then I met my husband, and he was like, well, let's try Australia. And honestly, I knew nothing about Australia, like nothing. I thought tropical weather, it's sunny all the time. Didn't really knew a bit from what I read in the Gourmet Traveller, but the Gourmet Traveller never really got to South Africa, so it was bits and pieces. So quite a shock to then come here and see this whole new world, and learn real fast. It's been a massive 10 years of just catching up and trying to fit what I am and what cooking is for me into a new city and my place in a new country and a new city. Yeah.
What is cooking for you? I know with Neighbourhood that was really sort of focused on roasts, but Old Palm liquor is completely different. What is your style of cooking?
So the chef school I went to was sort of super French orientated, and very, very much based on the Culinary Institute of Americas. They're sort of the way they teach everything from the ground up, the whole French repertoire, starting with stocks and ending with pastry, and then adding extra years or degrees, depending on what you want to specialize in. So that was very much my identity, as a young cook, was just kind of churning out all this really French technique inspired stuff. And I stuck to that in South Africa. Then, of course, you get to London and they have their own spin on things. And the cooking there is really quite unique. It's this kind of, neo-British, kind of really, when I was cooking in London, it was sort of the height of the gastropub kind of era. And I was like, oh, I like this. Like, this is kind of more relaxed, and, it's not the really uptight kind of stressful cooking for me that I was doing. I wanted to sort of do more of a relaxed kind of vibe. And I kind of added that to my repertoire, as well as then having grown up in South Africa, and basically, braai is a massive part of what we do and how we eat every day, and a part of own our own food culture. So I brought all of that here, and then Australia is entirely different. I don't know what I expected. I thought that there would be more of the gastropub idea that I had in London. I thought that more of it would be really prevalent here, but I really underestimated how much of its own entity Australian cooking was. I mean, obviously, super naively, just not knowing anything about Australia because I hadn't traveled to this side of the world, and not taking into account the massive Asian influence that the cooking has here. And I loved it. I was like, this is amazing. It's so refreshing. It's totally different. And it just added a whole nother layer to what I do. And then when we opened the new restaurant, I guess I took inspiration from what that space had been before, the sort of really old Melbourne Italian kind of gangster joint, a European approach to things, and the fact that I was still super into just kind of doing very European style wine bar stuff. That's quite I guess, a universal concept now in our kind of wine bar world, I guess, if you will. And I kind of went with that because it felt safe, and it just felt like it fit the atmosphere, and I was really comfortable with cooking roasts and doing meat cookery. The chef Pete Goffwood, who I worked with in South Africa, that's his whole thing. Like, is just doing sort of big roasts and lots of butchery and stuff. And yeah, it's kind of evolved now. It's I think it's more refined now. I work with very good sous chefs there who basically help me run the place, and I give them loads of input. And they put their own style on the menu as well. So by now the menu reflects who is running the kitchen, who is cooking in the kitchen. It's still a brand, but it's very much, the menu is very reflective of who is cooking for you at the time in the kitchen. Yeah. And Old Palm is then just a bit of a, more of what I sort of grew up with, really, type of cooking, and a reflection of I think an exploration I've been doing lately of African spices, a lot of things that in South Africa I took for granted for being around. And I've recently sort of discovered in Melbourne spices, long pepper, koririma, lots of kind of Ethiopian and Nigerian influences that are here, that I feel are a little bit ignored, or they're on the periphery of the cooking in the city. And I wanted to use them because they're here and they're awesome sort of flavors in food as well. And yeah, kind of just do something a little bit different. But it's been hard, and yeah, I guess as many chefs will tell you, fire cookery is a whole different thing. Especially, I mean, I guess when I cook at home, I'm just cooking for myself, and it's, I've got a plan, I'm going to cook this thing or this meal. But service, and keeping a fire going for hours and hours and hours, and the flavors of the wood and of the grill, and trying to teach other people to keep it going at the correct heats. That's been the challenge. And just not sort of cooking the shit out of something sometimes.
Can you give us an example of a dish or two that you've cooked on with this new menu at Old Palm Liquor, and an example of reaching back to your heritage?
Oh, there's so many. I think off the top of my head, it's probably some of the fish dishes that we've cooked where in South Africa, for example, we have fish that we would braai, and then you would. This is a very weird thing, I think, if you're not South African, but we have something called snoek, and you would braai the whole fish, and then you would brush it with apricot jam, and then you eat it with bread, and I think you eat it with more apricot jam too, depending on where you're from. But anyway, there's a lot of salt involved. So there's obviously the apricot jam, which is originally a Malay flavor influence in South Africa. And then the salt is just braai is obviously everything is liberally salted because it's that sort of trio of smoke and salt. And I think I have translated that into cooking kingfish here and not using apricot jam as such, because I now think that is maybe not ideal outside South Africa and cultural understanding. But I've used a Malay spice mix, which we do fish curries and things with in South Africa, and we've put it on the fish. So you still get that kind of warming, sweet flavor profile, and obviously the thanks to the Malay influence of kind of how to season the fish and complement the fish with a different flavor, but not quite cooking it exactly as it was at home. I mean, there are quite a few dishes from home, bobotie, etc., that Australians might be familiar with that I feel really just don't translate that well outside South Africa. Yeah, and I'm trying to think of another dish now. Generally, I think it's more the method of cooking and the combination of flavors that I use in the restaurant, other than specific dishes that I try and, I guess, replicate in the restaurant. It's more the style that I'm trying to replicate and that I'm influenced by on the menu here. Yeah.
How has this period of time been for you personally? Has it changed you as a chef?
I'd say yes. I'd say I in the beginning of lockdown, creativity just went out the window. I couldn't think. I was just sort of like, I kind of felt quite dull. I was like, just, I think like a lot of chefs, I never considered, I'd never done takeaway in the 20 years I've been cooking. It was just not something that I've ever been exposed to. And it was super daunting. And then we had no choice. So I think it was a bit of a, like I had no choice but to turn my thinking inside out and think differently about what I'm selling, and kind of leave that passionate creative person, to the side for a bit, and just go, how am I going to sell a product to stay alive? And Simon, my husband Simon, is super good at thinking on his feet, and he sort of sometimes just had to kind of drag me through it and go, that's a good idea, but it just doesn't work. Can you just take the idea and turn it into something that will work, that'll sell, that'll translate when someone opens a box after it's been, driven somewhere. And that's been very hard. And I think I think it'll forever probably change how I think about how I design something and then how someone else perceives it on the other end, which was always really important to me. I never wanted to design food that was just really photographic and kind of sort of stunned. I really wanted something where people ate it and they just sort of had a good time, or it reminded them of something. Super happy if they said that it reminded them of their grandmother's cooking. Hopefully, if their grandmother was a good cook, and I think this is really kind of galvanized how I think about how someone else that I have no connection with is going to perceive what I decided to design. Yeah, I don't think that'll change. I think I've taken it on board, and I'm going to work with that now. Yeah.
Your venues are very reliant on, groups of people enjoying great energy and experiences in a really noisy, rowdy sort of room. How do you feel about those restaurant models moving forward, given what we've just been through?
I don't know. I've keenly been watching what's been happening in America to see how how restaurants are adapting to this, and whether you can still really create that atmosphere of conviviality and that rowdiness with with restrictions around, which I think creates sort of an unconscious stress in our minds. So obviously not everyone's having the amount of carefree fun that they might have had before. I think temporarily we're going to have to get used to things being a little bit different, but we'll get there eventually. Again, I think it's just going to take much longer than anyone is probably feels like or is comfortable with. But I'd rather take a little bit longer and sort of do it safely than go back into another shutdown, another lockdown, which uh, another one. I don't know. I don't know how many people can sort of face that. And it's obviously the square meterage model is not ideal. Like, we'll have to carry on with takeaway for quite some time, because restaurants just restaurants need to be packed for more reasons than just conviviality. Like, we need to you need to get loads of customers all the time. And I don't know, I'm interested to see what they come up this weekend, what sort of roadmap they come up with to get us out of this safely.
You mentioned you've been keeping your eye on the US. Do you think there is an opportunity for more outdoor dining like we've seen in cities like New York as we move towards summer?
I would love to see that, actually. I don't know. I don't know. If you open restaurants here, you're so aware of all the council restrictions everywhere. Like, there are so many restrictions about what you're allowed to do on a footpath, and what you're allowed to do around your restaurant. And I councils are really going to have to relax a lot if we are going to apply something like that here. But I think, speaking to a friend that I have in Canada, they've gone out of their way to help restaurants to just increase their dining areas just a little bit. And why would we not if we're going into summer? It obviously depends where your restaurant is. I mean, we're on Lygon Street and we're on Nicholson Street. I'm not sure how much we can sort of add that to our offering, but why not in the city? They've been hurting for so long now. I'm sure they can come up with something that sort of suits everyone. And Australia's summer is glorious to be outside. So I really hope they come up with some kind of modified idea. Yeah, it's a great opportunity. Yeah, I really hope that they take some of that on board, because we're going to need something extraordinary. And I mean, that is extraordinary to think that people are doing that. If you look at how cities work today, there's a reason there are council restrictions and all that, but it's going to take an extraordinary effort from the people who run cities to make the city work again and to make cities exciting and vibrant again. So I really hope they do something like that. I certainly think if everyone decided to work together, that there is some room for that. Yeah.
It's been a challenging period, but has there been some positives to come out of this for you?
Yeah, I think I think all the sort of challenges that you kind of have to sort of navigate in a career. I mean, I've stuck to the same career now for a super long time, and everything that you go through that you absolutely hated, after a while, you're like, you know, you have an opportunity to look at it and go, oh, that's what I learned from that, and it sucked, and I really don't want to do it again, but you take something from everything if you care to, and I hope that in the future that is the case with this. Yeah, and I really consider myself an introvert, but it turns out that after so many lockdowns, even introverts need to hang out with other people. So maybe that was the lesson in it for me personally. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Almay, so good to catch up with you today and really loved hearing your story. Hopefully we get some good news and a clear roadmap this weekend from the Premier. But we've loved having you on Deep in the Weeds, and stay in touch and we'll chat again soon.
Thanks for having me. Keep well.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.